When salt was worth dying for, history's weirdest luxury. Let's kill the myth first. Salt was never pound for pound more expensive than gold. That's internet folklore. But dismissing the salt story because of one exaggerated claim misses the point entirely. Salt was spectacularly valuable, sometimes reaching one-to-one weight exchanges with gold in specific markets during shortages, and its impact on human history dwarfs most precious metals. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder called wars fought over salt most deserving of record, and he wasn't being dramatic. The economics of ancient salt were brutal and simple. Humans need sodium chloride to survive. Without refrigeration, salt was the only way to preserve meat and fish for months. No salt meant starvation in winter, spoiled food in summer, and dead livestock. Ancient civilizations recognized this biological necessity and monetized it ruthlessly. The word salary derives directly from salarium, the salt rations or salt money given to Roman soldiers. The phrase "worth your salt" isn't quaint wordplay, but a literal calculation of human value. In 650 BCE, the Solnitsata settlement in present-day Bulgaria became Europe's oldest town specifically because of nearby salt deposits. People built permanent civilization around the stuff. The Chinese were arguably the most sophisticated salt traders in history. By 2700 BCE, they were already extracting salt by boiling brine in clay vessels. The Yangtze River salt mines became so economically critical that Chinese emperors established state monopolies as early as 221 BCE under the Qin dynasty. These weren't gentle taxes, but aggressive government control of production, distribution, and pricing. The salt monopoly generated roughly half of the imperial government's revenue for centuries. Merchants who smuggled salt faced execution. This wasn't theoretical deterrence, but regular enforcement. The revenue funded armies, infrastructure, and the bureaucracy that held China together through multiple dynasties. Africa's salt trade routes rival the Silk Road in historical importance, but get a fraction of the attention. The Saharan salt caravans connected sub-Saharan Africa to Mediterranean markets for over a millennium. Timbuktu, now synonymous with remoteness, was a thriving commercial hub precisely because it sat at the intersection of salt routes from Taodeni mines and gold routes from West African kingdoms. Caravans of thousands of camels carried salt blocks south and returned with gold, ivory, and enslaved people. The exchange rates were staggering. In 14th century Mali, 1 pound of salt could trade for 1 pound of gold in certain markets during supply shortages. Not because salt was worth more than gold universally, but because in the middle of the Sahara, hundreds of miles from the nearest deposit, salt meant survival and gold meant nothing. Europe's salt politics were equally vicious. Venice built a maritime empire partly on salt monopolies, controlling Adriatic salt production and distribution. The French gabelle, a salt tax imposed in 1286, became one of the most hated levies in history. Citizens were forced to buy minimum quantities of state salt at inflated prices, with rates varying wildly by region to maximize revenue extraction. Smuggling salt, faux sonnage, could earn you a death sentence or a lifetime rowing in the king's galleys. The gabelle wasn't abolished until 1790 during the French Revolution, and many historians argue it directly contributed to revolutionary sentiment. When people say taxation sparked revolution, they're talking about salt as much as tea. The Industrial Revolution murdered salt's mystique almost overnight. In 1791, French chemist Nicolas Leblanc developed a process to synthesize soda ash from salt, opening the door to industrial chemistry. By the mid-1800s, mechanical mining and refining made salt cheap and abundant. The Liverpool salt industry, using rock salt from Cheshire deposits and industrial-scale evaporation, crashed global prices. What cost weeks of labor became a commodity cheaper than potatoes. Today, global salt production exceeds 280 million metric tons annually, with prices around $150 per ton for industrial grades. The average American consumes about 3,400 milligrams of sodium daily, most from processed foods. We're drowning in the stuff that once crowned kings. One fascinating footnote: salt's economic collapse didn't end its strategic importance. During World War I, Germany's chemical weapons programs depended on chlorine derived from salt. Modern industries consume about 93% of produced salt not for food but for chemical manufacturing, de-icing roads, and industrial processes. That cheap table salt is chemically identical to what sparked Mediterranean wars 3,000 years ago. The substance didn't change. We did.